morning, everyone. Welcome and
Good morning.
good morning. Good morning.
Huh? It froze.
Okay. So again, wonderful to see all of you again this morning, and we will start with a short mindful breathing exercise meditation. Watching your breath mindfully for a few moments. Then we'll try to generate good intention by thinking. May us coming here together and listening, and engage in discussion, reflection, contemplations. May all of these become cause and conditions to improve and transform our mind, to inspire us to engage in our spiritual path, our practice meditations. And through meditation and practice on the spiritual path, on the Dharma, may it be cause and condition to cultivate all the spiritual experiences or realizations within our mind stream. So we can find more patience in our life, being more happy, satisfied, content in our life, and improving our loving kindness, compassion, and the wisdom. And may it be cause and conditions to achieve our highest potential, the fully awakened state. so that not only we can be help to only few individuals, but to be able to be help to all sentient beings. And not only being helped sometime and not being helped sometime, but to be able to be helped all the time. And not only being helped with something temporary, but to be able to help them to every help, especially the help to achieve their own highest potential, fully awakened state. And to be able to help unconditionally, without any condition, without any expectations. Simply being able to help. Okay. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodon soki sonam pa, chanchu pa tu dani kapsu, dagi sheshe ki pe sonam, lola kenje sangye tu pa. Sangye chodon soki sonam, chanchu pa tu dani. Dagi sheshe ki pe sonam, lola kenje sangye tu pa. So, so we have been discussing on this Atisha's text, The Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment, and last week we came to the points where he described about, three kind of persons or individuals according to their spiritual goal and the path, and within that, first description three, and then describing what those means, what are the path of those individual or persons practice, and what those practitioners, what does small or inferior individual persons or individual means, and of the path, and what does the middle persons or individual means, and what is the path, and what is the what does it means to be a great person or individual in the path. So and last week we kind of described about we went through where he explained and described what is the meaning of, here they use the inferior individual or persons. And here the reason why they use small or inferior is because of their spiritual goal, compared to the spiritual goal of middle individual and great individual of the persons. Their goal is more inferior in relation to them. So that's why it's called inferior, because your goal, spiritual goal, is still quite limited, quite narrow compared to the others. Because the goal is to achieve, the happiness of future within the samsara. So you inspire, you practice with the inspirations or with a goal to have a better futures and better happiness in the futures, but within the samsaric realm, within the samsaric state. And so therefore that kind of motivations, that kind of goal is inferior or small compared to the two others. So so we describe a little bit about that. And within that, there can be two kind of persons, as I mentioned. The inferior individuals, ordinary inferior individuals, and more supreme inferior individuals. And the ordinary inferior individuals, is only who think of only happiness of this life, and nothing more than that. And then kind of supreme individual, inferior individual is who not only think of happiness of this life, but also who think of happiness of future as well. Because who also think of the future of others, happiness of futures, or who think of happiness of future even more than the happiness of this life, while they still think of the happiness of this life, but they are more concerned and put more effort towards the happiness of future lives within the samsara. So that we finish up to that, and then next is the middle individual practice, and what it means, middle individual, or the persons. So in the text it says, those who have turned their backs on samsaric pleasure. So when we talk about being who turns their back on samsaric pleasure, what it means is not being attached to the samsaric pleasure, not being attached to the samsaric pleasure, not having an attachment to the samsaric pleasure. Okay, you don't have any clinging, grasping, attachment to the samsaric pleasure. That is what it means in turning backs, on samsaric pleasure. It means you are not attached to them. No matter how much greatest samsaric pleasure you might have, all kinds of samsaric pleasure, but you are not attached to them. So that is what it means in turning back to samsaric pleasure. And refrain from the sinful karmas. And that means, the path is, so the path is to refrain, restrain, or eliminate, the cause of samsara, and that is negative karma, and the root of those negative karma, that's the delusions. So the negative karma and the root of those negative karma, the afflictive emotion or the delusion themselves. So and And so that is what you refrain from. That is what you try to destroy in order to free from the samsara, and the suffering of samsara, And then in terms of starting, so that is what you reframe and what you engage into, what you practice is starving merely for the pacification of themselves alone. And that middle individual practitioners, their goal is to achieve, total liberation. Pacifications here, the translation, but nirvana or liberations. Okay. And they want to achieve total liberations and nirvana for themselves alone, for their individual liberations. They work for individual liberation. Their motivation is individual liberations. Such individuals are said to be middling. Such individuals are said to be a middling person or middling individual. So it is a middle because your spiritual goal is more higher than the previous one, because previous one is only concerned with samsaric pleasure, but now you are not concerned with pleasure, samsaric pleasure. You are not attached to any kind of samsaric pleasure, but instead you want to achieve freedom from the samsara, liberation from samsara. And so it is higher in that sense. Your goal is more broader, But compared to the goal of the bodhisattvas, whose goal is to achieve liberation, not for themselves, but for all sentient beings, not for just themselves, but for all sentient beings, compared to that, is not as broad as that. So therefore is middle, is higher than the previous one and is less than the bodhisattvas' motivations in terms of their motivations, in terms of their spiritual goal, and so that is why it's called middling, So such persons with such motivations, so spiritual goal, and who work towards that to achieve individual liberations or freedom from the samsara and suffering of samsara, that person is middling individual persons, and the practice that lead to that is the path or the practice of middle scope, middle scope, that is known as. So, so here, the samsara is to be abandoned, and the liberation is to be achieved. Okay, so there is something that for such practitioner, what they want to abandon is the samsara, and what they want to achieve is the liberation or nirvana. And why one want to abandon the samsara? Why does one want to abandon the samsara? Because samsara is full of suffering, pain, problems, difficulty, imperfections. Always something's going on. Sometimes much worse, sometimes less worse, but still something going on. Sometimes something going on physically, sometimes emotionally, mentally. Sometimes it's happening to us, sometimes it's happening to our friends, families, or someone else. There isn't any day where you don't see any suffering and pain if we kind of open our eyes, mind, what is happening in the world. So as long as we are samsara, we can never be free from the problem, suffering, and nobody wants problem, nobody wants suffering, pain, But as long as we're in samsara, there's always going to be some pain. There's always going to be some problem. There's always going to be some suffering. That is the reality of samsara. That's the nature of samsara. That's the fact of samsara. If we are in samsara, we cannot expect any other result. Expecting any other result is going against the reality. The very nature of samsara, is problem, suffering, pain. Always something's happening. So if we don't want pain, sufferings, problems at all permanently, then we have to free from the samsara. That is the only way. That is the only way you can have permanent. That is the only way you can find a permanent, permanently no problem, permanently no pain, permanently no sufferings. Otherwise, everything else is only temporary. We can find a solution to some problems, but temporary. We can overcome some pain, difficulties, but only temporary. Until we are able to free from the samsara. Samsara is synonymous with suffering, pain, in a way. Samsara means suffering. Samsara means pain. Samsara means problems, in a way. And so if you don't want pain, suffering, problem, then we need to free from the samsara, And the way to free from samsara and to achieve total liberations. So nirvana liberations, when we talk about liberation, nirvana, we are not talking about something kind of physical world, that we escape from some physical world to another physical world. Do you get it? Samsara doesn't mean physical world. Neither nirvana, liberation, mean physical world. It's all, mental state, Due to our karma, due to our delusions, there is suffering, and there is samsara, and then there is suffering, It's not due to the external things, it's due to our karma and our delusions that there is a samsara for us and there is suffering for us, that there is problem for us. Same way, nirvana or liberation is when we are able to free from our own contaminated karma or actions and our own delusions, then that is when you achieve nirvana, liberations. And liberation, nirvana, is synonymous with permanent happiness, lasting happiness, true lasting happiness. Nirvana means, true lasting happiness. Nirvana or liberation means true. And so when our mind is free from all these contaminated actions and delusions, then that's when someone achieves nirvana. And when they achieve that, then there is a permanent and everlasting happiness, lasting happiness, true peace. There's no more problems. There's no more problem individually for oneself. There's no more suffering. There's no more pain. Forever. So both samsara and both nirvana is a different mental state, different mental state. Samsara can be experienced in this body, in this same world, in same environment. Nirvana can be experienced in this same world, in same environment, in this same body. It's not like you are looking for somewhere else. You don't have to find nirvana somewhere else. You can find nirvana in this same world, liberation, nirvana, this same world where you are, in this same environment, in this same body. It's just overcoming those delusions, those afflictive emotions. Normally, sometimes when we think of samsara, we think of this world. Do you get it? It feels like I have to get out of this world because this world is samsara. That's how sometimes you feel it's a misunderstanding, Not because of this world that we have the pain, suffering, because of our own karma and our own delusions. Because of our own karma and delusions. When there's no more karma, no more delusion, you can find perfectly peace, happiness, just in this same body, in this same environment, in this same world. So yeah, in order to painful samsara, in order to overcome the result, in order to overcome the result, the painful suffering samsara, then we have to overcome the cause or root of that. That is the contaminated karma and the delusions. How can we overcome the root or the cause of this suffering samsara or painful samsara? Is by cultivating the path. And the path that can overcome the root of the cause or the origin or the root of the painful suffering samsara is the path of moral discipline, meditate concentration, and wisdom. When we cultivate those paths, the path of moral discipline, the path of meditative concentration, the path of wisdom, realizing the ultimate reality or truth, then we can overcome the contaminated karma and the delusions. So that is the path. By cultivating that path, by engaging that path, by practicing that path, then we can achieve the result, the nirvana, the liberations. The result, the liberation, the nirvana, total freedom, total peace. So one can achieve that result by integrating or applying or cultivating the path. So then, the practice of Four Noble Truth, or the practice of 12 link is the practice of middle scope. the practice of middle scope. The path or the practice of middle scope is the practice of Four Noble Truth or the practice of 12 link. The 12 link is a kind of like expansions of Four Noble Truth in a way, but basically that is the main practice. And so, so through practice of Four Noble Truth, as Maitreya explained, by understanding samsara is like disease, recognizing and understanding samsara is like illness, disease that we do not wish, which is painful. Which is painful and something that we do not wish. Recognizing that, understanding that, and then recognizing and understanding the contaminated karma and the delusions is the very root of that illness, the root of that disease. Through understanding, that is the very root of that disease that you do not want. That is the very cause of the illness that you do not, that is painful, that you do not wish. Then you cultivate a strong wish to get rid of that cause of that illness in order to get rid, to heal that illness. In order to cure and heal that illness, then you want to, cure and eliminate the root of that illness, the delusion and the karma. And how we do that is by applying the medicine, the treatments, whatever the medicine, the cure, the treatment. That is the path. That is the path. By recognizing and understanding the path is the cure, is the treatment, is the medicine to heal that delusions and that suffering, that illness of delusions. And when we apply that cure, that treatment, that medicines, in order to heal that illness and the cause of that illness, and when you are being fully healed, from that illness, that is the liberation, that is the nirvana. That is the liberation, that is the nirvana, when you are being fully healed from that illness of, the samsara, by having healed the very cause of, or the very root of that samsaric illness, the delusion karma. So we recognize that, we understand that, and through that understanding and recognizing, then we try to apply the cure, the medicine, the treatments as much as possible in order to cure completely. And in order to do that, first you need to recognize and understand how samsara is miserable. How samsara is miserable. How samsara is full of pain, suffering, miserable. Thereby, when you understand samsara is something, sometimes even though it can appear to us, samsara is, not a miserable, wonderful. It's just a deception for a moment until something happens. When someone says samsara is miserable, suffering, painful, we think what they are talking about, my life seems just fine, good, until something starts happening to yourself, your family, friends, or someone else. and then everything looks upside down. It turned 100 degrees. Your life started to feel like it has turned 100 degrees. It feels like you are living in a different world, not the same world that you used to live, the world that you used to know. To begin with, the impression that we had at the very beginning was just a deceptions. It was just a deceptions. Samsara can never be great. Samsara can never be great. Samsara can never be, perfect. True happiness. Samsara means, imperfect, miserable, pain. That's what it is. Sometimes the pain manifests, sometimes it does not manifest, but it is pain. Sometimes when you have certain illness, it manifests and you have symptoms. Sometimes it might not manifest and you might not have this symptom, but the illness is still there. It's still illness. It's still there. It's never gone there. So when you don't have a headache, the symptom, headache, or you are not feeling nauseous, or you don't have fever, or it might feel like that we don't have the illness, but that is just a deception. The illness is still there, it has not been cured, and that is what it is. Sometimes we feel that way and we think it is you are free, now everything's fine. But it is not. Illness is still there. Illness hasn't been cured. The illness is still there. It is only that, the symptom has not manifested now, or you are not experiencing the symptom at the moment. And that is how, and once you understand, that then you will not be attached to the samsara and samsaric pleasure. Once we really understand samsara is really suffering, samsara is really miserable, samsara is really undesirable. Once you understand that, once you really realize it, then there will be no more attached to those samsara and samsaric pleasure. When you are no more attached to samsara and samsaric pleasure, then you will start to cultivate and develop true renunciations. True renunciations. And when you have true renunciations, and when you are no more attached to samsara, samsaric pleasure, then, one begin to enjoy your life more, find more content and satisfied in your life, regardless of whatever your situations. You begin to find more peace, more content, more satisfaction in your life, regardless of what your situations. Healthy, unhealthy, financially secure, not secure, whether you have friend, not friend, whether you live here, whether you live somewhere else, whether you are with someone else or you have some, regardless, whatever that, you will find more sense of content, peace, happiness, because your mind is not pulled by here and there, due to attachment. Your mind is not kind of running after here and there. Your mind is not, running here and there all the time because of the attachments. Your mind will not feel so, dissatisfied and so unhappy because of not having this, this and that, because due to the attachments. That's what we are, at the moment. At one moment we feel this is just good, perfect place to be here. And then the moment something happens and you feel this is, I wish I just live here and go somewhere else. This is miserable. Because we're attached to certain conditions and that condition change. So that is why you are being miserable. Do you get it? Because we're attached to certain conditions and it seems the conditions were there and next moment the condition changed. Now you start to feel miserable. But if you are not attached to that conditions, then it doesn't affect you so much. Conditions there, okay. Condition changes and it is a different things, different conditions. And you are also quite okay and happy and quite satisfied and peaceful with that. Then, we can find much more peacefully. And same thing, whether it's the external condition, whether it's our physical health situation, we're attached to be healthy, we're attached to be healthy. And because of that, when we are unhealthy, we become miserable. There's two levels of pain when you have health issues, Of course, there is a physical discomfort and pain, but then there's on top of that, there's a mental pain, not being able to deal with that, Sometimes that is much more worse. That's much more painful, We already have on some level physical pain, but then on top of that, because of that, not being able to handle it well, not being able to deal with well, not being able to, then, it creates another level of pain, that is mental pain, that can lead to all kinds of different mental states, But if we are not attached to that, if we are not attached to even, some scientific pleasure as being healthy, of course we try to be healthy because that helps us to be healthy, to practice, to be more help to others, benefit to others. If we are healthy, we can practice better, we can practice more, we can be more help, benefit to others, all of that. So we try to be healthy, but while we try to be healthy, but being attached is different than trying to be healthy. Do you get it? Someone can be trying to keep healthy and do everything to be healthy without being attached to that. But the problem with us, we are very attached to that state of being healthy. And when we are not healthy, then we become miserable, very unhappy. Not only emotionally, mentally, not talking about physical discomfort. And that is same with everything, we're attached to a good relationship. Keeping a good relation is not a bad. Okay, we need to have good relationship with everyone. We need to try to keep good relationship with everyone. We should try to have good relation. That is not bad. We should try to do that. But being attached to that is the problem. When you're attached to that, then when the relationship change because of circumstances, conditions, then we become miserable. We become miserable. Our life becomes miserable. But if you are not attached to that, you will always try to have good relationship. And if you continue to have good, it's great, but for some certain cause, condition doesn't come, things doesn't go, and it doesn't have good, best relationship, still you don't feel so miserable about that because you're not attached to that. And that could be any kind of relationship, We are not just talking about a particular relation, any kind of relationship, And same in everything, Fame, reputations. Fame and reputation is not a bad itself, but being attached to them is a problem. If you are not attached to it, you can use a fame and reputation for good purpose, for good cause. You can use your fame, your reputation to be more help, more benefit. But then when we're attached to it, then that becomes problems. Then that becomes miserable. When you have fame, you feel like happy. When you lose your fame, your reputation, then we start to become miserable and unhappy. Same with the power and money, the wealth. The wealth itself is not a problem. The power itself is not a problem. If you're not attached to it, you could use. If you're not attached to it and you have good intention, motivation, you can use your power, your money to help more people, more sentient beings. But when we're attached to them, then it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem to you, and it becomes a problem to the world. When you are attached to the power or the wealth, then it becomes a problem. When you don't have it, then you become very miserable, unhappy. And so therefore you are willing to hurt someone in order to get that one, because you so desperately want that. You so desperately want that because you are so attached to one. You so desperately want that, so you are willing to do anything in order to have that, in order to hold on that. You are willing to break the law. You are willing to be immoral, unethical. You are willing to hurt someone, harm someone. You are even willing to take someone's life sometime in order to hold on, in order to get that, and in order to hold on that you are so attached to, and that becomes the problems for individual and for the world. So that is all of you. If you see that, all is coming from that kind of attachment. Attachment to the samsaric pleasure means here, samsaric excellence, samsaric excellence, samsaric pleasure, the worldly things, worldly things. Sometimes in Buddhist terms, we might use some worldly concerns, having attached to physical comfort, happiness, attached to wealth, attachment to fame, attachment to reputation, attachment to praise, attachment to people liking you, or any sentient being liking you, all of that, And when we're attached to them, then you expose yourself to more pain and more sufferings. You expose yourself to more danger for yourself and danger to others. And your mind becomes very, very unstable. So easy to change anytime when there is changing conditions. On the other hand, if we are not attached to all of them, any of those samsaric pleasure, samsaric, excellence, samsaric qualities, any of those kind of worldly concerns, then, we will be able to find much more peace, much more happiness, much more satisfaction, much more content in our life. And we will be able to, one will be able to find, more stable in their life, more stable, stillness, peace in their mind, in their life. And when there is more peace, stillness, happiness in your life, you create less problem to others. You create less suffering to others. You become less danger to the others. So it helps you, it helps others in that way. And you are more willing to help others when you are more calm, peaceful, still, and more happy. You are more willing to be help, benefit to others. So therefore, giving up, by seeing, no matter what samsaric pleasure, no matter what samsaric excellent qualities, all of that, everything's, physical comfort, certain level of samsaric mental happiness, fame, reputations, fame, wealth, praise, everything's, they all are very unreliable. They all are very unreliable. Everything can change any moment. And when that changes, it affects your minds if you are attached to it. If you are not attached to it, it will not affect you so much. If you are attached to it, then when those changes, it will affect your mind. But the reality, they will change all the time. They are very impermanent nature, unreliable, unstable. It keep on changing. Sometimes you have something and sometimes you don't have. Sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less. Sometimes you have better, sometimes you have not better. And so those things keep on going, whether it's a reputation, whether it's a health, whether it's a fame, whether it's a wealth, or whether it's a, praise. Sometimes you have people praising well, and sometimes that changes. Sometimes you have people liking you, and sometimes it changes. They might not like you anymore. All these are always changing. And so, therefore, something that is unreliable, unstable, that's changing all the time. With that understanding, we learn not to be so attached to them. We train and learn not to be so attached to them. And we train our mind not to be so strongly attached to them. That's the point. So strongly attached to them. Through that understanding, of that, all of them are very unstable, unreliable. Object of changeable, object of change, transitory. So once we are not attached to that, and then we give up that attachment towards them, instead of being attached to them, then we direct our minds towards, instead of unstable, stable. Instead of unreliable, reliable. Instead of transitory, kind of permanent, happiness, peace, of liberation, nirvana. So instead of being attached to those samsaric things, we direct our minds and to achieve, a happiness, a peace that is reliable, that doesn't change, that is reliable, that is stable, that is everlasting, So then, through that, then we develop, the wish to achieve that liberations, nirvana, and to free from the samsara and samsaric pleasure, and in order to achieve that liberation and nirvana, in order to free from the samsara, then we engage into the practice, the path, the Eight Noble Path, or when that Eight Noble Path is kind of summarized or contains, then it contains three trainings, the training of moral discipline, material concentration, and wisdom, and through that, then we try to achieve that, if we, so that is that. So as I mentioned before, in order to the root of all the suffering of samsara is the contaminated karma, and even the root of that karma is the delusions. So delusion is the, and delusion is such that, when we have delusions, immediately it disturbs your mind. Immediately, the moment they manifest in your mind, any of delusions, any of those afflictive emotion or delusion, the moment it arises in your mind, immediately it disturbs your mind. Immediately it disturbs your peacefulness, your stillness, your calm mind. Immediately it disturbs that. It take away our calm, peaceful, happy mind. Not only it does that, is immediately the moment it manifests, it does that. It has that effect. The moment it manifests, and then due to one of those afflictive emotion or delusion arising, then we act through one of the doors, body, speech, and mind. Sometimes even when you are upset and angry, even you try very hard not to show it, you cannot hide it. People can see it through your getting red, your nose might be getting red, your ear might be getting red, They can see the changes. They can see the changes. Even you try very hard not to show that, you can feel it, Of course, different people have different way of doing it, some people, and some people, even when they are angry, they don't talk, they will not respond. But still, they are angry when they do that. So they didn't want to express that, but still it is expressed, Yeah, and so we have a friend, in the monastery, when he is upset and angry, then he wouldn't respond, he wouldn't say anything, no matter what you say, he will not respond. In a way, it's better than most other people's, how they respond, But still, even that response, they're angry, and then once angry, why he is angry, then it starts to disturb you, why he is angry. Even though he might not say anything bad thing, but just knowing someone is upset, and that sometimes it might think, it might disturb the other persons, So that's the effect it has, on yourself and to others. And so the delusion not only affect, it manifests, it disturb that, but then it comes in, we act in certain way, sometimes, of course, then we might have negative thoughts after that delusion thoughts, For example, anger, then we might wish something bad for someone, the person to whom we're angry, We might wish them bad, That is mental actions, From that anger, we have already acted mentally, wishing something bad happened to that person because we're so upset and angry with that person. Even if we didn't say anything, even if we didn't do anything, that is already created the karma. We already engaged in the action, mental actions. And then, of course, sometimes we go further than that, and then we, yell, and we loudly, we say, we curse and say all kinds of things, And then we create more negative karma. And sometimes we are not happy and satisfied with your cursing and all this nasty word. Sometimes, physically, we become violent. Physically, we become violent. And then again, we create even more negative karma, more stronger negative karma. So we create negative karma, as a consequences, we experience result of that also in the future from others, Others also having a negative thoughts towards us, wishing us bad. Others cursing on us, saying nasty things. Others being violent with us, So we create the cause and condition to experience those in the futures, And then, by that kind of, actions, we have hurt someone else. When I yell at someone, when I curse, when I say something nasty, or if I act violently with someone, I'm hurting another beings, creating a lot of another suffering, pain to that person. Not only I'm affecting that, I'm upsetting all friends and family of that person. Do you get it? I'm upsetting and hurting and creating problem and pain to not just that person, all of the family of that person, the friends of that person. Everyone gets hurt, everyone gets pain, Sometimes we just think, I'm hurting that person. Just one person, do you get it? Actually, if we look how much our actions, that kind of violent action, affect not just one person, so many people. So many people. Unnecessarily so many people. Sometimes we might think, I was nasty to one person and I only hurt some one person. But if we really look, no, we hurt so many people. We hurt so many people. Sometimes we don't think, we just think one person, but actually, we hurt so many people, we create so many more enemy. Not just one enemy, many enemy. We create so many enemy. So that is how destructive, how how harmful the delusions are. and the actions that comes out of that delusions. With that understanding, then we try to put much effort to, not to engage in any of those harmful actions, any of those harmful negative actions, and not to have any kind of those negative thoughts, feeling, the delusions. We try hard, we try as much as we can, trying to put effort to so that to reduce and minimize those negative emotions, those delusions as much as possible, and not to allow those to manifest as much as possible. If they do manifest because our practice is not strong, because we are not mindful, because delusion too strong, because we have so strong karmic imprint from the past, even sometimes it manifests, we try to let it go as soon as possible. Don't hold on that. Don't hold on there. Sometimes because of all of that, sometimes even we try, sometimes we are not mindful. Sometimes even we are mindful, the delusion too strong, and we cannot control. And because of, past so strong imprint is so strong, so even we don't want those delusions to manifest, but sometimes they do manifest. But when we recognize they are manifested, try to let it go and not hold on them. That's the key, not to hold on them. And instead of magnifying it by giving too many fuel on that delusion more and more, we stop giving fuel to that delusions and just kind of let it go, let it go. And so not holding, it comes, if you don't hold, it comes and it goes. And, it disturbs your mind for a moment, but then after a few moments, you are not disturbed anymore, You might be angry for a few seconds, but then you can just let it go and just, okay, You might have one negative thought in a moment, but then, next moment you can move on and without being kind of caught up in that anymore and just move and not holding on that. And so that is what we try to do, as much as we can, in whatever way that we can, whatever different meditation, different technique that works for us. Whether we do mindfulness meditation, whether we do any different kind of analytical meditation, whether we try to use the mantra visualizations in dealing with that delusions, whatever different form of practice meditation, whatever is more you find helpful, beneficial, we try to apply that and try to just let it go, not hold on them, And the very root of all these delusions is the ignorance, the fundamental ignorance. Is the like the is the ignorance is the misconceptions or misunderstanding of the reality, misperception of reality. And all other delusions are fed based on that misperceptions. All other delusions rely on that misinformations. The misinformation that is provided by that ignorance. So all other delusion, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, all of them are rooted in that delusions, that root delusions, the fundamental ignorance. That ignorance, through being ignorance and misperceptions, misunderstanding, and then based on that misinformations of that ignorance, then all other delusions act, believing that misinformation is the truth. Even though it's a misinformation, it's not truth. But then on the basis of believing that is the truth, then delusions, anger, attachment, all other delusion arises. So is that fundamental ignorance, that is the very root of all the delusions. So therefore, in order to overcome and destroy all the delusion, then we need to destroy the very root of those delusions, and that is the fundamental ignorance. And in order to destroy that fundamental ignorance, then we need to have the wisdom relies on the ultimate truth or reality, because this ignorance is misperceiving the reality, misconceiving the reality. And in order to destroy that, we need another mind, a wisdom that perceives the reality, that perceives the truth correctly, unmistakably. And that's why we need that wisdom, the special insight, penetrating wisdom that can penetrate the very root of all those delusions, the penetrating wisdom, special insight or penetrating wisdom. We need to cultivate that. In order to cultivate that, then of course we need to meditate practice. Continue to meditate practice. In order to meditate practice, we need to study, learn, remind ourselves those practices all the time. And in order to have that special insight, penetrating wisdom, then we need to have a strong meditative concentration or shamatha or karma abiding. Without that strong concentration, without strong karma abiding and meditative concentrations, even we try to do meditations, we are unable to meditate strongly because our mind gets distracted. While we are trying to practice, while we are trying to meditate, our mind gets distracted. Or our mind becomes kind of dull, not clear. And with that kind of dull or distracted mind, then, we cannot really penetrate, unable to penetrate. So the practice is unable to penetrate and have the result that we wish to achieve, and therefore it becomes much more difficult to cultivate that kind of wisdom. It becomes much more difficult to cultivate that kind of penetrating wisdom. The practice, the method that we need to cultivate that wisdom is not strong enough. The practice, the meditation, not strong enough. It's not strong because our practice meditation either distracted or our mind is kind of dull, not clear. And due to either dullness or distractions, then it becomes much more difficult to achieve such penetrating wisdom. Without the penetrating wisdom, we cannot overcome the fundamental ignorance. Without overcoming the fundamental ignorance, we cannot overcome the delusions. Without overcoming the delusion, we cannot overcome creating more karma. Without creating stopping more, creating more karma, we cannot stop the samsara and the suffering of the samsara. And so that. And in order to have a strong practice of Meditative concentration, strong meditative concentration, karma, shamat, and then we need to have strong practice of moral discipline, moral discipline. The foundation of strong practice, foundation of moral discipline. The more stronger foundation of moral discipline you have, the more easier it is to cultivate the meditative concentration of karma abiding. And the more stronger meditative concentration and karma abiding you have, the more easier it is to cultivate the penetrating wisdom. And so therefore, that we need to have this practice of high training, we call, in order to liberate from the samsara and the cause of samsara, and to achieve, total liberation, total liberation or nirvana or freedom, from the samsara and the cause of samsara. And so this whole practice and this whole practice of path is the path and practice of middle school. So that is, so someone who have that kind of the wish to achieve nirvana without being attached to the samsara and engaging into that practice of such a Four Noble Truth. If there's someone is a middle individual practitioner, and that practice is middle school practice. And that practice of the Four Noble Truth is the very foundation of all the Buddhist practice of all different Buddhist traditions. Whether it's Theravada tradition, whether it's a Mahayana tradition, within the Mahayana traditions, there is a Prasna Paramita vehicle or tantric vehicle. No matter what practice you engage into, any form of those different traditions, they all are rooted and based on the fundamental understanding and practice of Four Noble Truth. Is based on that. The Mahayana practice are the expansion of Four Noble Truth in a way, and the Tantric practice are expansions of the Mahayana practice, So it is more kind of expansion of each of those practices, but they all are kind of rooted and founded in that very fundamental practice and the teachings, and that So and that is why when the Buddha gave first teaching of his enlightenment, the first teaching of the Four Noble Truth, and based on Four Noble Truth, later he gave the teaching on, Prajna Paramitas, such as Heart Sutra and all of that, the Mahayana teachings that he gave later, that is expansions. First, he started with that fundamental, build up that foundations, and once you have that foundation, he expand on that for those other individual practitioners who have inclinations towards Mahayana practice, towards Mahayana path, But that is the very, very, very foundations. For example, let's say eightfold path, right view, right intentions. So those Prasna Paramita teachings on the wisdom are the expansions of the right view, And the practice of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, the practice of generosity, all of that are expansions of the right intentions, So you can have a kind of, simple right view and right intentions, or you can go much more details and much more expansions of that. And when you go in expansion from that, right, all these teachings can expansion of from that principle and those teachings, So. So yeah, I think maybe that is all. I think for today, I think so. That is the yeah. So anyone has any questions? Any questions? Anything from today? Yes.
Kodo has a question.
Yes, please.
I do all kinds of bad stuff all the time. And when I catch myself, do you have a favorite mantra, or when I catch myself thinking something negative, is there an easy prayer or a beautiful mantra that I can take in to just shift it and let that negativity go, to not keep going? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, as I mentioned, I think there are so many different practices, different formal practices, and of course, different individuals have different inclination towards certain practice than others. There is a way of dealing that through mindfulness practice, kind of just simply observing and watching and not getting involved with those thoughts and feelings, not allowing to kind of continue change, but just simply watching and let it come and go. So certain practice, a lot of practitioners who are very inclined and in those kind of practice, they kind of apply that kind of method, and it helps, to let it go and not to hold on them and quickly. And then, there are others that you describe, especially in Mahayana teachings, what we call analytical meditations, and there are many forms of analytical meditations. And then, we use those different analytical meditations to counter the negative thoughts, because the negative thought thinks in certain way, based on certain reasoning and based on certain understanding, based on certain, that negative thought has its own reasoning and why you feel that way, and so then you use the analytical meditation to kind of counter that, how that kind of reasoning is not logical and that is not true. And through different reasoning and logics, you prove that your negative thought thinking is not correct. And through that, then again, you overcome that negative thoughts. So that is how analytical meditations kind of come into, and different analytical meditations. So for some people that they have more inclination, or they feel more that suitable and they find more helpful, and so you can use those different analytical meditation in that. And sometimes, the question that you ask, sometimes for certain individual, when they have a very strong connection with particular deities, or either personal deities, or even like the special teachers, and like that, again, just to recollect them, sometime for like, how would Buddha respond? How would Buddha do that? Or how will His Holiness Dalai Lama respond? How will we react to that? Or, and just then through that, or the Buddha or His Holiness or someone, they will respond that, they will think that, or they will do that, and then just trying to kind of let yourself follow that path, that because you feel so connected with them and you want to follow them, how they would respond, how they will act. And so then it inspires you to kind of do that. And so for some that can be helpful, beneficial, and then sometime, while you are breathing, while you have that and you breathe in out, and then when you breathe out, you can think these negative emotions, kind of sending it, with a breath, you send it out. You just think, you can just feel you are taking all these negative emotions or whatever feeling or emotion you are having. And then as you breathe out, you can feel like you just, you just push it, to push it out. You just let it, you just release it, visualize, imagine releasing it. And then when you breathe in, you can visualize breathing the opposite positive emotion of that negative emotions, anger, where you release anger, and you can visualize taking in from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the Gurus, loving kindness, compassion. As you breathe in, you develop, you take in love, compassion, bodhicitta, and then, so again, that kind of, one can use that kind of meditation. For some, that can be helpful, beneficial. They can find beneficial. And so again, another is you can visualize whatever deity, you feel affiliated, that you feel connected, any deity. That for some it can be Tara, for some it can be Avalokiteshvara, for some it can be Manjushri, for some it can be Buddha Shakyamuni, Medicine Buddha, whatever, different people feel strongly with particular deities. And you visualize that deity being present being present. Even you cannot visualize clearly each of them in that moment. You just feel the presence of them in there, and then you can ask for their help, their blessings, their inspirations to release and to let go of this whatever negative emotion, feelings, thoughts that's arising, manifesting. And you can visualize light, nectar calming and cleansing that negative energy, that negative thought, feeling, emotion, whatever, totally cleansing it, purifying it, that particular. While you recite whatever mantra of that deity that you feel connected, it could be Tara, it could be Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, whichever deity you feel, Buddha Shakyamuni, Medicine Buddha, whatever you feel connected, and then receiving the opposite of that negative thoughts, receiving, if it's anger, while you purify the anger, you receive the loving kindness, compassion, feeling love and compassion. You are releasing the ignorance. You can visualize receiving the wisdom and feeling your whole body the wisdom. If it is a selfish attitude, releasing that, purifying that, and receiving the cherishing thought for others. So, so whatever, if it is a kind of feeling of low and depression, receiving the hope and confidence and like that, so whatever you are trying to, so then that can be also beneficial and helpful. Okay, so, and I'm kind of giving those, sometimes it might be a little bit overwhelming, you too many of them, but because different people feel connected with different practice more effective, and whatever particular practice they find more effective for individually, you try to apply that. Yeah. Any others? Okay, if not, then we do the dedications. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, evil fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see form and the deaf hear sound. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored, finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those who weep with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.